I pulled a young man from a pile of corpses. Later, he made a triumphant comeback, reclaiming his title as crown prince and seizing power from his own father. The next time we met was in the imperial court. He sat high on his throne, looking down at me with a lofty gaze. "Shen Yu, what reward do you desire?" At that moment, a flood of memories crashed over me. This was not our first lifetime. In my previous life, I had begged for marriage, begged for a legitimate place by his side. But he had married his childhood sweetheart, confining me instead to a desolate palace courtyard. This time, I knelt down and bowed deeply. "I am an orphan with no father or mother. I dare to beg for one favor. May I be so bold as to address your Royal Highness as my elder brother. When you see His Royal Highness later, don't you dare say anything out of line." I followed the head nanny closely, taking each step carefully in her wake. Inside the imperial palace, an autumn wind swept through, sending a plane tree leaf drifting down to land at my feet. Somehow, a wave of disorientation washed over me. It felt as if I had been here before. Today was the third day since Xiao Huai had reclaimed his title as crown prince. In the grand hall, he promised to bestow rewards upon all his loyal supporters: gold, official ranks, fame and glory. The nanny told me to wait outside the hall. She kept repeating the same words to me, over and over again. "Just ask for gold and silver when the time comes." Yi Shu, the daughter of the Grand Tutor, grew up with the emperor. They are childhood sweethearts, and her family is prominent and powerful. "You must know your place." I nodded and agreed to everything she said. I had been in the palace for 7 days. All this time, I had been staying in a small side hall. This head nanny had been kind to me. If a bit overly verbose, I never told her the truth. It was I who had saved Xiao Huai from that pile of corpses all those years ago, until loyal old ministers found him and escorted him back to the capital. For 2 whole years, he had lived with me in our remote fishing village. I had helped him apply medicine and tend to his wounds. He had helped me fish, chop firewood, and repair our dilapidated thatched cottage. My parents had died when I was young, leaving me to fend for myself since I was a teenager. After meeting Xiao Huai, I had thought my life would finally be different. He had been so gentle to me, his whole demeanor exuding the quiet elegance of a scholar. Standing by the low table, he had taken my hand and written 8 characters. "Guan, Guan, cry the fishhawks on sandbars in the river." He had taught me to read them, 1 word at a time. Back then, I had truly believed we were just like the poem described. He had cared for me, and I had cared for him. We would hold hands and walk through life, simple and peaceful, side by side. 2. Send in Fisher Girl Shen Yu. After waiting for 2 whole hours, my name was finally called. All those before me had been generals, senior ministers, princes, and nobles. I was just a commoner, so I was placed last in line. The hall was vast and empty, lined with civil and military officials on both sides. I had never seen such a grand and imposing scene. Instinctively, I wanted to find Xiao Huai, but he was so far away, sitting on the imperial throne. His features blurred and indistinct. A voice rang out, "When you see His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, why do you not bow?" I jolted back to my senses, quickly bending down to kowtow as the nanny had taught me. The moment my forehead struck the stone steps with a heavy thud, in an instant, a jumble of chaotic memories flooded my mind. I clutched the hem of my sleeve tightly, my fingers digging into my palm until my knuckles turned white. So it was true, I really had been here before. This was not our first lifetime. In my previous life, it had been right here in this very hall. Xiao Huai had asked me what reward I wanted. I had lifted my head without hesitation, saying I wanted to stay by his side as his lawfully wedded wife. That was my plea for a legitimate place in his life. But I had not known then that Xiao Huai had already made a promise to the first person who had entered the hall, the Grand Tutor. He would marry his mentor's daughter as his crown princess. In return, the Grand Tutor would resign from his official post and retire to his hometown in the south to spend his remaining years in peace. My request at that time had not only been a foolish, delusional dream, it had also put Xiao Huai in an impossible dilemma. To make matters worse, a censor had stepped forward. He was the Grand Tutor's bitter rival, and he had been looking for an opportunity to bring him down, so he had launched into a lengthy speech. remonstrating with Xiao Huai in front of everyone. He had dredged up every single detail of how I had taken care of Xiao Huai for 2 whole years. If your Royal Highness abandons this village girl, he had declared, will you not break the hearts of commoners across the land? 3. Shen Yu, what do you want? Finally, Xiao Huai asked the question. Cold sweat streamed down my forehead. In my previous life, he had ultimately yielded to public opinion and married me as his secondary wife. I had never wanted to share a husband with another woman. Naturally, I had quarreled with him, even packing my bags and preparing to return to my fishing village. But Xiao Huai had stopped me. He had taken my luggage and pulled out the clothes inside one by one, folding them neatly. Ayu, why bother running away? He had said. No matter where you flee to the ends of the earth, I will find you. But on our wedding night, he had still gone to his childhood sweetheart Yi Shu. It was not until the red wedding candles had burned down to stubs that a personal maid sent by Yi Shu from the Grand Tutor's mansion arrived at my door. She had brought a cup of wine with her. Drink this, young lady, she had said coldly. There has never been such a thing as a secondary wife for the Crown Prince. There is only one legitimate wife. That wine had been fiery and harsh. I still remembered the searing pain as it burned its way down my throat, now that I had been given a second chance. I wanted to live, but how? I wanted to leave, but could I really escape? The capital was filled with powerful officials and nobles. I was just an ordinary fishing girl, one wrong step, one misspoken word, and I would be destroyed beyond redemption. Shen Yu, Xiao Huai called my name again. There was a hint of impatience in his tone. Those who sat atop the hierarchy were always like this, weren't they? Even though he had been nothing but gentle to me during those 2 years in the village. I beg your Royal Highness to take pity on me, I said, my voice trembling slightly but my resolve firm. I am an orphan with no father or mother. I dare to beg for one favor. I paused, finally making up my mind. May I be so bold as to address your Royal Highness as my elder brother? The title of Imperial Princess was nothing more than an empty name, with no real power or authority attached to it. Especially under the reigns of previous emperors, they had grown tired of bestowing official titles and gold as rewards, so instead they had taken to granting the imperial surname. Occasionally, for prominent women from common backgrounds, the royal family would bestow upon them the title of Commandery Princess as a show of respect, along with a mansion where they could live independently. I knelt prostrate on the ground, my forehead pressed firmly against the stone steps. I never dared to lift my head. Even such an empty title would be far safer than staying by Xiao Huai's side. In my line of sight, I could see his bright red royal boots, inching closer and closer to me step by step. He slowly knelt down beside me, his voice so cold it seemed to drip with frost. Shen Yu, you want to be my younger sister? 4. The hall was dead silent. Younger sister. Xiao Huai let out a cold, mocking laugh. Shen Yu, what makes you think a mere fishing girl is worthy of being inscribed in the imperial genealogy? His right hand unconsciously stroked the sachet hanging from his waist. It was a little worn from years of use. Embroidered on it was a white crane. It was the birthday gift I had given him. Xiao Huai probably didn't even realize it himself. Every time we had quarreled in the past, every time he had wanted me to say something to comfort him, he had always made this unconscious gesture. But this time, I was not going to give in. I said nothing. I did not even lift my head to look at him. The atmosphere in the hall grew increasingly tense and stagnant. Finally, a minister standing on the right side of the hall stepped forward and bowed deeply. Your Royal Highness, it was the Grand Tutor. When Xiao Huai had been deposed, he had taken over the management of state affairs in his stead. Over the years, he had effectively become a regent, wielding all the power in his own hands. Ruling with an iron fist. There is no shortage of virtuous and talented women in this world, he said calmly. There have been precedents in our dynasty before bestowing the imperial surname and granting a mansion. Your servant believes that Shen Yu saved your Royal Highness's life, and this request is not unreasonable. Was the Grand Tutor being kind-hearted? Of course not. During those 2 years that Xiao Huai and I had lived together in the fishing village, a young man and a young woman alone under the same roof, who could possibly guess what had transpired between us? He was only looking out for his daughter's future. The crown prince should have only one legitimate wife. Xiao Huai reached out his arm and gently helped the grand tutor to his feet. There is no need for this, master, he said, his tone softening a little, but still cold and distant. But what if I, your crown prince, insist on refusing? The two words insist on refusing. Xiao Huai spoke them very slowly, like a stone falling off a cliff, cold, hard, and sharp. Yet even so, he had only just returned to the capital. The political forces in the imperial court were complex and numerous, and the majority still followed the grand tutor's lead. And the grand tutor maintained his bowed posture, unyielding. If your royal highness does this, you will break the hearts of the common people. The moment those words left his lips, a clatter of knees hitting the ground echoed through the inner hall as a crowd of ministers knelt down. Your royal highness, please reconsider. Xiao Huai's expression turned dark and stormy. He stared coldly at the kneeling ministers, as if trying to memorize each of their faces one by one. In the end, he said nothing at all. He turned around and walked away. In my previous life, it had been the censor who had stepped forward to oppose him. In this life, it was the grand tutor. But what never changed was the tense atmosphere, the endless power struggles and intrigue. No matter how many lifetimes I endured this, I felt utterly exhausted. As I walked out of the hall, the nanny hurried over to support me by the arm. Oh my dear girl, what on earth happened in there today? I have never heard His Royal Highness speak to the grand tutor like that before. Like what? She lowered her voice to a whisper. His Royal Highness has always been so respectful to his mentor. 5. I did not understand the grand tutor, but I knew Xiao Huai. He was a man full of ambition. On the night before he returned to the capital, he had told me his true identity. Then he had taken my hand and described his political ideals to me: to eliminate partisan struggles, to pacify the barbarian tribes, to recapture the lost territories in the northwest. How could a man like that ever be willing to be controlled by the grand tutor? But of course, all this talk of power and strategy had nothing to do with me. What I wanted was simple: to live, to just survive, and to do that, I needed to stay far, far away from all these people. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. I had no place to live in the capital, so I had to remain in the palace for the time being. As the nanny and I were walking toward the back of the side hall, someone suddenly called out to me, "Miss Shen." I turned around. It was the grand tutor. His hair and beard were already streaked with gray, his back slightly hunched. If it weren't for the bright crimson first-rank official robe he was wearing, he would have looked just like any ordinary elderly man one might meet on the street. I must admit, old servant did not expect Miss Shen to have the courage to make such a request of His Royal Highness, he said with a faint smile. I did not know how to respond, so I simply bowed deeply and said nothing. The grand tutor laughed softly. He took a step closer to me, lowering his voice so that only I could hear him. As long as Miss Shen does not covet anything more, I will make sure to secure the title of princess for you. And if you want to find a good husband for yourself, most of the young talents in the imperial court are my proud disciples. A smile played on his lips. His tone was relaxed and confident, as if he was certain I would not refuse such tempting conditions. But all I could think about was my previous life. The cup of poisoned wine that his daughter Yi Shu's maid had brought to me. That wine had been so bitter and fiery, burning my throat until it felt like it was on fire. To say that the grand tutor had known nothing about what his daughter had done, I would never believe it. But, at least for now, we were on the same side. I kept my head bowed, my tone calm and even. Please rest assured, Your Excellency, I know my place. There are some things that a person like me can never hope to attain. I did not know if the grand tutor was a good official, but he was certainly a good father. For the next 3 days, he led the officials under his influence to the crown prince's residence every day to remonstrate with the court. In the end, he obtained that imperial edict for me. Commoner Shen Yu, virtuous and pure of heart. Bestowed the title of Princess Changle, granted a mansion. It was short, just a few lines. It did not grant me the imperial surname Xiao, but I never cared for that name anyway. I knelt on the ground. First, I let out a long, deep breath. Finally, I would not have to step into the deadly quagmire of harem intrigues that had trapped me in my past life. The head eunuch who came to deliver the edict saw me staring blankly, and even took 2 steps forward to help me up. This is such a great joy. From now on, when you see the Crown Prince, you can call him Prince Brother. Prince Brother, the 4 words rolled off my tongue. Interesting. Although the Grand Tutor was eager to marry me off, finding a husband was not such an easy task. As he had said, the Grand Tutor had many disciples. But when Xiao Huai returned to the capital, he brought only me with him. The relationship between him and me was almost common knowledge both inside and outside the court. Even though I had been granted the title of Princess Changle, who knew what would happen in the future, to act now would be nothing short of provoking Xiao Huai. Once I had my own mansion, I moved out overnight. During my stay in the palace these past few days, only Mammy had treated me with even a shred of sincerity. I did not ask for any maidservants, I only wanted her to come with me. Mammy packed my luggage, her tone softening for the first time in a long while. I am getting old. It would be nice to see the outside world with you. I thought so too. I had come from a small fishing village in the countryside. In my past life, I had been trapped by Xiao Huai's side. In this life, I wanted to see a bigger, more prosperous world. But when I arrived in the capital, I discovered something unexpected. The reputation of Princess Changle was actually quite a big one. Streets and alleys, wine shops and tea houses everywhere. People were talking about me. Have you heard about the new sister the Crown Prince took in? Rumor has it she saved the Crown Prince's life. She can be said to have the merit of following a dragon to ascendancy. I heard the Grand Tutor has been busy arranging a marriage for her, but no one has come forward to propose. Haha, is she extremely ugly? Or is there something else wrong with her? If there is something else wrong, then it must involve a royal secret. Hush, this kind of thing. I twirled the teacup in my hand. Gossip and slander were always unpleasant, and to be dragged into gossip with Xiao Huai made it even more tiresome. I patted Mammy's hand. I wanted to go back, but at that moment, a dagger flew through the air, right past my eyes. In the blink of an eye, it stabbed into the table where the few gossiping tea-house patrons were sitting. After a chorus of gasps, a clear male voice rang out. Speaking ill of a woman behind her back is that the conduct of a true man. He wore a cyan silk robe, his long hair tied up neatly, a short sword hanging at his waist. I remembered, I had seen him before, a few days before Xiao Huai's wedding in my past life. I was not allowed to leave, and wherever I went, I was followed by a group of maidservants. I must have been truly bored. Sitting alone by the pond, Miss Shen, that was when he walked past. I just happened to catch some butterflies. Would you like them? I did not know how he knew my surname was Shen. But after he said that one sentence to me, he was called away. Xiao Huai came over from the inner hall. Lu Ren, you are late. His gaze flicked casually in my direction, cold, as if I should not have been there, should not have been talking to anyone else. This time, I still did not think I would have any further interaction with Lu Ren, so even though I appreciated his chivalrous gesture, I did not go over to talk to him, but left the tea house directly. Mammy probably thought I did not know Lu Ren's identity, and reminded me softly from the side, Miss, that is the only son of Lord Lu, the Marquis of Wuan. Lu Ren. Lu Ren's father was the great General Ding Yuan, the Marquis of Wuan, a marquis of non-imperial blood, granted the title of nobility. He commanded hundreds of thousands of elite troops, able to mobilize all the border guards, and Lu Ren had inherited his father's legacy, becoming a famous young general. Seeing that I did not react, Mammy thought I had never heard of him. She held up her fingers and began to chatter again. If we talk about power in the court, the Grand Tutor is first, then Lord Lu is second. The day the Crown Prince rewarded those who had rendered meritorious service, Lord Lu was the second to enter the palace. They both came to ask for marriages for their children. You know, what do you think Lord Lu was asking for? Before Mammy could finish her sentence, the sound of horse hooves clattering approached from behind. Miss Shen, he had actually chased after me. The evening wind ruffled his robe, making it flutter like a flag. He looked like a young man who had stepped out of a frontier poem. Even in this life, I still did not know how Lu Ren had learned my name. He cupped his hands in a salute to me. I am Lu Ren, the son of the Marquis of Wuan, general of the cavalry. He dismounted his horse and walked beside me. His voice was clear and bright. Miss Shen, do not mind what those people said. I shook my head, said casually, it is not entirely untrue. I am probably the hardest woman to marry in the capital. But this sentence made Lu Ren burst into hearty laughter. You are not allowed to claim that title. Clearly, I, Lu Ren, am number one in that regard. After I said that, Mammy tugged at my sleeve and gave me a meaningful look. The Lu family was loyal to the country for generations. Lu Ren's grandfather, the old Marquis Lu, and several of his uncles had all died defending the country, falling on the battlefield. Now, only Lord Lu and Lu Ren remained in the direct line of the Lu family. For this reason, the nobles in the capital whispered that any family who married their daughter to the Lu family would surely end up as a widow within a few years. Moreover, Xiao Huai had just returned to the court. It was impossible that he would not take back the military power. How long could the Lu family's power last? My father is afraid that I will never find a wife, so he specially begged the crown prince to help arrange a marriage for me. Lu Ren led his horse, walking forward, but this request has also given the crown prince a headache. Since ancient times, marriage has emphasized mutual affection and willingness. Even the imperial family cannot arbitrarily issue an edict of betrothal, can they? The two of us chatted aimlessly like this, until we slowly walked to the gate of the newly built princess mansion. The 4 characters Princess Changle on the plaque were written in seal script, freshly hung up. Lu Ren stopped at the gate. He fell silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. Do you not think that we are quite well matched? Perhaps we could just give it a try. These past few days in the capital, I had lived a peaceful, uneventful life. The emperor was gravely ill, holding only a nominal title, having long since lost all real power. Now, it was Xiao Huai who handled state affairs every day. Having just seized power, he was swamped with a mountain of internal and external affairs. He had no time at all to bother with me. During the day, I stayed in the princess mansion, occasionally embroidering sachets, or researching recipes with Mammy. I saw Lu Ren quite often. He would drop by from time to time, bringing some pastries and fresh fruits for me to taste. Shen Yu, these are all famous snacks from the north. You must not miss them. None of this had ever happened to me in my past life. Peaceful, comfortable, it felt almost unreal. Perhaps it was this overly ordinary life that created such a stark contrast with my past life circumstances, often plunging me into nightmares late at night, as if I had returned to the night of Xiao Huai's wedding. I drank that cup of poisoned wine. Somehow, I felt that the surroundings were very noisy. The sound of gongs and drums filled the air. Yi Shu's wedding chamber was clearly far away from me, but the noise still reached my ears. My throat burned with pain. I did not want to die, so I summoned all my strength and shouted Xiao Huai's name. Xiao Huai, I hate you. I woke up from the nightmare with a start. The last 4 words had escaped my lips. My whole body was covered in cold sweat. I took too long. Deep breaths, feeling parched and thirsty. Mammy was sleeping in another room, and I did not want to trouble her, so I lifted the quilt myself, intending to pour some water to drink, but as soon as my feet touched the ground, my entire body trembled violently, and I fell back onto the bed. Hate me, Shen Yu. You hate me that much? It was Xiao Huai. He was actually standing in front of me, his eyes fixed on me unblinkingly, staring intently. The night was very late. No lamps were lit in the room. Only the faint moonlight streaming through the window allowed people to vaguely make out his expression: anger, confusion, and a hint of indescribable loss. You hate me? Xiao Huai's voice was hoarse, repeating the question softly to himself. He leaned forward slightly, reached out his hand, as if he wanted to stroke my cheek as he used to, but now, this gesture only felt awkward and repulsive. I tilted my head slightly, dodged his touch. Xiao Huai's hand hung suspended in midair. It looked rather ridiculous, so it turned out that I was the only one who had been reborn. He knew nothing. This was good. He was him, I was me. There would be no more entanglement between us. Xiao Huai slowly lowered his hand. Shen Yu, he straightened his back, as if he had once again assumed the lofty identity of crown prince in the imperial court. I never wanted to be your brother. You should know, What I wanted to give you when I brought you back to the capital." His right hand stroked the sachet hanging from his waist, again and again, as if he was waiting for my answer. But what could I say? Xiao Huai's expression grew more and more anxious and gloomy. "Shen Yu," he called my name again. I stood up, knelt on the ground, and bowed deeply to him. "Although Shen Yu does not bear the surname Xiao, I am still your sister after all. I do not understand the meaning of these words. Moreover, breaking into the princess mansion at night, even for the crown prince, is truly an overstep of bounds." The next morning, when Mammy placed breakfast on the table for me, I did not even notice. "What is wrong with you?" I made a vague sound of acknowledgement, only reacting after a long while. I had been thinking about what happened last night. I really had not expected Xiao Huai to come here alone, without bringing any guards or eunuchs with him. What worried me even more was the words he said before he left. I knelt on the ground. He did not tell me to get up, nor did he move. After a long while, he squatted down, his index finger brushing across my cheek. His voice was low, but faintly tinged with anger. "Shen Yu, do you really think that with this title of sister, you can stay far away from me? I advise you to abandon those inappropriate thoughts. The world is vast, but where is it not under the rule of the Xiao family? Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I can easily bring you back." Mammy pushed the chopsticks and bowl closer to me. "What are you thinking about, princess?" I was thinking. I stirred the porridge in the bowl with my chopsticks. "Things in this world are not as simple as I thought. Mammy, perhaps I really should get married." In the afternoon, Lu Ren came again. This time, he brought chestnut cakes from Anshi Square. The chestnut cakes from this shop were hard to buy. You almost always had to wait in line. How strange. I always had an inexplicably familiar feeling toward Lu Ren. It was as if I had met him a long, long time ago. He knew I loved butterflies and sweet treats, chestnut cakes, in particular. He also knew I enjoyed listening to storytellers spin their tales, and flying kites on those warm spring days. It was almost as if we had known each other forever. This time, he led a white horse by the reins and nodded toward the back mountain. "The azaleas are in full bloom over there. Would Miss Shen like to go see them with me?" I nodded. "Lu Ren, I've thought about what you said last time. Maybe the two of us really could make it work." 12. Lu Ren froze for a moment. After a long while, it dawned on him. "You mean," I picked up where he left off, "marriage?" He suddenly broke into a childlike grin, jumping for joy and cutting me off mid-sentence. "I know. I'll go tell my father right away. He'll be over the moon to know he's getting a daughter-in-law. Oh, right, I'll go beg the crown prince for a royal marriage edict too, because on that day of rewards in the Grand Hall, the Lu family had requested a marriage for their son. In the end, for propriety's sake, they still had to go through the crown prince to make it official. Ever since Marquis Lu returned from the border fortress, his old war wounds had been acting up from time to time. But that day, the nanny suddenly came down with a chill. I hired a carriage and sent her to the medical clinic. I missed the appointed time to enter the palace. By the time the head eunuch led me to wait outside the study, Lu Ren had already been summoned inside. Xiao Huai seemed to be in a rare good mood that day. He had just finished reviewing several memorials, and his voice, filled with casual banter, drifted out of the study to where I stood. "Found yourself a girl you like so quickly." He picked up a brush and paper, writing a line of characters as he spoke. His tone rose, light and relaxed, a rare show of good spirits. "Which noble family is she from? Why didn't you bring her along to let me have a look? This marriage proclamation can't be scribbled randomly, you know. It has to match your family's status and background." He held the writing brush in his right hand. His left hand brushed gently over the paper. It was as if he was pondering what to write next. The afternoon sun streamed through the open door. Lu Ren spoke as if he was talking about something perfectly ordinary. "The girl I have my heart set on is Princess Changle. She had some family matters to attend to, but she should be arriving about now." In the next instant, Xiao Huai's movements seemed to freeze completely. A drop of ink fell from his brush, blooming a dark stain on the paper. He looked up. I stood outside the study door. And our eyes met, I thought to myself. His mood today was probably not as good as I had imagined. 13. What? For a moment, a look of rare confusion and surprise crossed Xiao Huai's face. It was as if everything happening right now was completely beyond his comprehension, beyond his control. A royal marriage edict, for Shen Yu. He muttered the words again, narrowing his eyes slightly. The writing brush in his hand had long since been flung to the ground. It slid across the table, leaving a thick black streak of ink in its wake. After a long, long while, he seemed to finally realize something. He let out a low laugh. Standing up, he walked over to me. Miss Shen, you certainly are clever. Not only did you secure the title of princess for yourself, but in the blink of an eye, you've also snared the young Marquis of Lu. But don't you ever stop to ask yourself, as a mere fishing girl from the countryside, are you really worthy of? His gaze fell on Lu Ren. The words died abruptly on his lips, unspoken. I followed his line of sight, and realized he was staring at the sachet hanging from Lu Ren's waist, the one I had embroidered. Over the past month, he had been coming to see me with all sorts of snacks and trinkets. Since I had nothing to give him in return, I had embroidered this sachet and hung it on his waist. Shen Yu, your embroidery skills are even better than the best embroideresses in the capital. When Lu Ren had received it, he had held it in his hands and admired it for a long time. Although it had sounded a bit like flattery, the embroidery patterns from our southern lands were indeed vastly different from those in the capital. In that one glance, Xiao Huai must have recognized it, recognized that the sachet was my handiwork. The one I had given Xiao Huai was already worn and faded. I had embroidered it for him several years ago, on the carriage ride back to the capital. He had even said that once he had taken care of all the affairs of the court, once he had ascended the throne and secured his reign, he would ask me to embroider him some new pouches and belt ornaments. But now, I would never give him anything again. Compared to Lu Ren's sachet, the old one he had was far less exquisite and beautiful. His fingers trembled slightly. He clutched his own sachet tightly, as if afraid that someone would take away this last, small memento of me, Crown Prince. My father has already agreed to this marriage with Princess Changle, Lu Ren said, glancing at the Crown Prince's expression and adding a quick clarification. Very well. Xiao Huai turned around, taking 2 deep, steadying breaths. But what if I, your Crown Prince, insist on refusing? 14. When Lu Ren had told me he was going to beg the Crown Prince for a royal marriage edict, I had tried to dissuade him. With Xiao Huai's temperament, how could he possibly agree? But Lu Ren had shaken his head, taking my hand in his own. Don't worry, Ayu, I have a plan. There are some things that need to be said sooner or later. Lu Ren lifted the hem of his robe and knelt down on one knee. If your Royal Highness consents to the marriage between Lu Ren and Shen Yu, the Lu family is willing to hand over all military power, relocate our entire household to the south, and swear never to set foot in the capital again. Xiao Huai took a step back. A cold, mocking laugh escaped his lips. He looked at me. Then at Lu Ren. The corners of his mouth twitched. This condition was certainly not enough to sway him. The Lu family's military power would be his sooner or later. Even if it wasn't today, it wouldn't be long before he took it. And of course, Lu Ren knew this too. His real bargaining chip was the next sentence. I possess irrefutable evidence that the Grand Tutor has been forming cliques, amassing private power, and plotting treason against the throne. These words carried immense weight. Even someone like me, who cared nothing for politics, knew that the Grand Tutor was Xiao Huai's greatest thorn in the side. Although the Grand Tutor had agreed to step down and retire, the political forces in the capital were a tangled web of alliances and enmities. Even if he was no longer in the court, who could guarantee that the officials he had personally promoted would not continue to follow the Yi family's orders? This was what every ruler feared most. He wanted this entire world to belong solely to the Xiao family, not to be controlled by anyone else. Lu Ren, Xiao Huai said slowly after a long silence, is this a deal, a royal marriage edict in exchange for stability in his court? The Lu family would join forces with him to eliminate the powerful Yi clan, and once it was done, they would hand over their military power as well. He would reign supreme, unchallenged, the sole emperor of his realm, in complete control of his world. Does the entire Lu family agree to this? In this deal, I am the one who stands to gain everything, aren't I? As he spoke, he let out a laugh. It was a laugh that sounded as if he thought Lu Ren was the most foolish man in the world. But that laugh also sounded lonely and desolate, a fragile pretense, put up by a ruler who stood alone at the very top, with no one by his side. He ran his fingers over the paper of the marriage edict. He never looked at me again. 15. The day after Lu Ren and I received the royal marriage edict, we packed our belongings and prepared to leave the capital. I had been nothing more than a princess in name only, with only the nanny by my side. The Lu family was not large either. In recent days, they had dismissed most of their servants and attendants, only keeping a few old retainers who had followed them for many years, to take back to their hometown in the south. I sat inside the carriage. Lu Ren rode his horse beside me. Walking at a slow, leisurely pace, we chatted about everything under the sun. I told him stories of my life in the fishing village. He talked about his hometown too, the mountains covered in fruit trees and wild flowers, the vast forests where, if I liked, he could take me hunting for hares and pheasants in the autumn. I listened with a smile as he described our future life together. The carriage rumbled on until we reached the city gate. Beyond this gate lay the capital, and once we passed through it, we would never return. Just as Lu Ren had said, the carriage rolled forward. Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind us. "Is that Princess Changle?" A soldier in armor came running over, holding a letter in his hand, which he presented to me with both hands, bowing respectfully. "The Crown Prince sent me to deliver this to your Highness." Judging by his attire, he was one of the guards stationed at the city gate. My heart tightened. That scoundrel Xiao Huai, was he going to go back on his word at the very last minute? I hesitated, unsure whether I should take the letter or not. In the end, it was Lu Ren who took it from the soldier and handed it to me. "Just read it," he said gently. I took a deep breath, unfolding the letter. I saw that it contained only a single line of writing, **Shenyu. May you live in peace and joy from this day forth, free from sorrow in every year to come, ***. I remembered the day Lu Ren and I had left the study after making our deal with Xiao Huai. I had been walking behind him. With his back turned to me, he had suddenly whispered, so softly that I almost didn't hear it, "Ayu, how did we end up like this?" I turned my head to take one last look at the prosperous capital city behind us. Yes. Xiao Huai, in the end, we were all destined to go our separate ways. But I wish you well too. May you achieve all that you desire, and may your reign be long and secure. Side story. Lu Ren. 1. All I could remember was an arrow piercing my chest out of nowhere. Facing me were the barbarians from the northwest, the thunder of war drums, the roar of battle cries. Kill, kill, kill. The encirclement tightened by the minute. I spat out a mouthful of blood, my strength completely drained. When I opened my eyes again, the man standing before me had turned into my father. He patted my head gently. "Why are you sweating so much? Did you have a nightmare, father?" Hadn't father died on the battlefield 2 months ago? He helped me to my feet. "Tomorrow is the day the Crown Prince will reward his ministers. Anyone who has rendered meritorious service may request a favor. The Lu family lacks nothing. Well, except one thing. You're missing a wife. Tomorrow, I'll go ask the Crown Prince to grant you a marriage, too." That was when I realized I had been reborn. This time, the court reward ceremony was no different from my past life. The Grand Tutor wanted to marry his daughter to the Crown Prince. My father was obsessed with finding me a wife. Wait, there was one difference. The girl Xiao Huai had brought back from the south, Shenyu. This time, she did not ask the Crown Prince for a title of her own. Instead, she asked to address the Crown Prince as her elder brother. In my past life, I had met Shenyu twice. The first time, I was around 14 or 15 years old. A flood had caused riots in a southern region, and my elder brother and I were sent to garrison the area. In the middle of the night, our camp was invaded by a group of displaced refugees. Hundreds of them, shouting and brandishing weapons, seemed to truly regard us as their enemies. I was still a young boy back then, inexperienced in such matters. This was the first time I had faced a scene like this. It took an entire day and night for everyone to finally suppress the rioters. Many soldiers were seriously injured in the process. That was when I first met Shenyu. She was around my age, brought to the camp by the village chief. She carried a small medicine box in her hand. When she reached me, She carefully wrapped layer after layer of gauze around my wound, her movements gentle and meticulous. General. Does it hurt? I was not yet a general back then, but I thought to myself I would be a general someday. I was the youngest in the camp. The other soldiers never included me in their drinking games or gambling sessions. When I had nothing to do, I would go look for Shinyu. She lived alone. She often washed yarn by the stream. I would sit beside her with a basket, catching fish. Sometimes, if I caught a big one, we would pick up some branches, build a fire right there, and roast the fish for dinner. I was supposed to stay in the south for 3 months, after which I would be sent to the Northwest military camp for training. Before I left, I went to bid her farewell. Shinyu, when I really become a great general, I'll take you to the capital to play. 3. The second time I met Shinyu was in the capacity of Xiao Huai's subordinate. I still remembered the promise I had made to Shinyu. When I mentioned it to my father, he fell into deep thought. Where do you plan to find her? The south. That's exactly where the crown prince returned from. He brought back a few people who had followed him. You could ask around. I remember one of them was named Shinyu. Later came the rewards, the imperial request, and the marriage decree. A few days before the crown prince's wedding, I had gone to the palace and seen Shinyu once. She was sitting by the edge of the pond then, her expression listless, far from happy. It was as if she had been trapped in a golden cage. I walked up to her. What I really wanted to say was, Ayu, do you remember me? A few years ago, I was that young soldier who fished with you by the stream, but I never got the chance to say those words. Xiao Huai appeared at that very moment. Lu Ren, you're neglecting your duties. At that time, I thought to myself, yes. Shun, you must have loved Xiao Huai. I should not have neglected my duties. But how long had it been since then? She died on the night of Xiao Huai's wedding. 4. In this life, I would never let that happen again. Ayu and I returned to our hometown. The Lu family still had an old ancestral home here. It took us a few days to renovate the place. A few months later, Ayu rented a small shop by the street and opened an embroidery studio. My father and I took over a restaurant and started a business. This kind of plain, ordinary life, it was actually perfect. Perfect beyond words. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. Ayu and I already had a son and a daughter. The two little rascals fought every day, always running to their mother to judge who was right. I would take them by the hand to the embroidery studio to ask Ayu to settle their disputes, to see if it was the elder brother who started the fight this time, or the younger sister who was being unreasonable. We had just reached the entrance of the studio when the sound of galloping horse hooves suddenly echoed down the street. Urgent military news from the northwest. The emperor is leading his troops in person. I froze. In my past life, it was around this time that the barbarians invaded the northwest. Father and I led the Lu family army to meet them in battle. But in the end, betrayed by a traitor, we fell into an ambush and were trapped to death on the battlefield. This time, it was Xiao Huai who was leading the army to fight. Ayu and I exchanged a glance. Worry flickered across her face. Will the war spread to here? I shook my head. The Lu family army was an elite force trained by father and my uncles with their own hands. They would be fine. The war dragged on for a full year. Later, we heard that Xiao Huai had personally gone to the battlefield. In the fierce battle between the two armies, he shot and killed the enemy general, but he also lost an arm in the process. When the army returned to the capital in triumph, the first thing he did was to drag the retired Grand Tutor out of his home. He charged him with forming cliques for personal gain and plotting treason. Even Empress Yi Shu, who had been confined to the cold palace, was dragged out and thrown into prison. Of course, Ayu and I were far away from the capital by then. We only heard these things through gossip. As she embroidered a sachet, she said softly, "That man. He finally fulfilled the lofty ambitions he swore to achieve back then." Did he? But what he had lost only he himself knew. I was afraid. Side story. Xiao Huai. 1. When I lifted Yi Shu's wedding veil with my jade Rui scepter, she tilted her head slightly, looking at me with shyness and timidity. At that moment, I suddenly froze. Everything felt wrong. Was she the one who was supposed to be sitting here? Ayu, what was she doing right now? Suddenly, a commotion broke out outside the door. Help! Someone's dead. that woman surnamed Shin, surnamed Shin. I frowned slightly, about to step outside, but Yi Shu grabbed the sleeve of my robe. Husband, this is our wedding hour. Where are you going? I shook her off violently. I only married you because of the Grand Tutor's influence. In the future, you'd better not call me husband so casually. The servants who had been making a racket fell to their knees in a throng the moment they saw me come out, but none of them dared to say a word. I went to see for myself. It was only a few steps from here to Shunyu's bedroom. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest, an overwhelming sense of anxiety gnawing at me, until I pushed open the door. In the dim moonlight, she lay sprawled on the ground. A large pool of blood vomited from her mouth, staining the floor beneath her. At that moment, I felt like I was going crazy, too. I held Shunyu's body in my arms, sitting numbly in the room for the entire night. I kept calling her name over and over again. Ayu, Ayu. Ayu was never coming back. She had abandoned me completely. The Grand Tutor had held too much power for too long, threatening the imperial authority for years. I had long wanted to get rid of him. The marriage was nothing more than a step to stabilize him. Originally, I had planned to take my time with this step, not to act too hastily. But Ayu's death had made me lose my senses. In the days after Shinyu died, I did not allow anyone to touch a single thing in her room. I liked to come to her room to rest, pretending that she was still here. In the court, I began to gather evidence of the Grand Tutor's embezzlement and clique forming. The entire court was thrown into an uproar. Most of the ministers argued that the Grand Tutor had already resigned from his position. Why must I pursue him to the bitter end? Only one person stood firmly by my side, the only surviving son of the Marquis of Lu Ren. 3. The Lu family controlled the military power, the Yi family controlled the civil officials. Neither of them deserved to exist, but the Lu family had always kept a low profile, never interfering in court struggles. A seed of suspicion took root in my heart. I ordered my men to dig up everything about Lu Ren's life, to see if there was anything unusual about him. But his life was unremarkable. He had been stationed in various military camps and trained soldiers since he was 13 or 14 years old. It was the most ordinary growth experience for a general, except for one thing. He had been to the south. He had stayed there for 3 months, and during that time, he had gotten to know a girl named Shunyu. As I read through the pages of records, a hollow void opened up in my heart in an instant. Was it panic? Was it jealousy? So that was it. He had known Ayu long before I did. I was the latecomer. I almost tortured myself with this thought. I often summoned Lu Ren to the palace, forcing him to tell me stories about his time in the south. So that was what Shunyu had been like when she was a young girl. As I listened, I found myself smiling unconsciously and tears streaming down my face at the same time. That version of Shunyu, back then, she was so happy, so much happier than the days she had spent in the capital. 3 years passed. The barbarian army launched a large-scale invasion. Father and son of the Lu family led their troops to the front line. The battle was brutal, but the Lu family army would never lose. When they returned to the capital victorious, their popularity among the people would surely soar to unprecedented heights, so high that it would overshadow the imperial power. That was what I feared most. So when my spy reported that the barbarians had set an ambush somewhere in the northwest, I hesitated for an entire night. In the end, I never passed that message on to Lu Ren. I had never liked that man, after all. For the Lu family was gone, the Yi family was gone. Now, I truly held all the power in my hands. I had become a lonely ruler, an emperor with no one left by his side. But it felt like I had lost everything. All I had left was that single sachet that Shunyu had given me. I became obsessed with immortality elixirs. When I swallowed those pills with their strange, pungent smell, I seemed to see Ayu. She was back by my side again, smiling at me, asking me, "Xiao Huai, why haven't you come to marry me yet?" Some ministers tried to advise me to take care of my health, but what did they know? Could they bring Ayu back to me? I held absolute power in my hands. No one could stop me. The most trusted minister by my side became a sorcerer from the southwest. He claimed that he could bring Shunyu back to life, so I spent every day with him, refining elixirs and praying to the immortals. After all, there were no more powerful aristocratic families to threaten me. I no longer cared about the messy affairs of the court, until several generals from the former Liu family army led their troops in a rebellion. Generations of the Liu family have been loyal to the country, yet you drove them to their deaths at the hands of the barbarians. The rebel soldiers flooded into the capital. Quickly breaking through the gates of the imperial palace, I swallowed the last elixir. Lying on the bed in Ayu's bedroom, I seemed to see her face again, her hand gently stroking mine. Xiao Huai, you've come to find me. Yes, I've come to find you. If there is a next life, I will never let go of your hand again.